There are so many different personnel changes that can happen in our school district. So I just have a couple here that we're going to talk about. That first one is that family factor, right? Like those outside factors in the educational world is one of the hardest things to keep in check and break through and working and wanting kids to be successful on that daily basis. Family dynamics such as divorce, single parents, violence, and poverty are all issues that we're seeing every day, especially here in our school district. We want to have our students have that academic success, and sometimes that gets in a little bit of the way. So remembering that school is one of those most stable and safe, important places for students in their everyday life. That next personnel challenge that we might have is bullying. So when students are high strung and worried about bullying, they may not exhibit those strong academics that we're hoping for. This is continuing to be a bigger issue because of that social media and the freedom children are getting in their everyday lives. So remembering as educators, we are here and what we are doing for those kids. The last personnel change I want to talk about is the funding. So this can be on a global level in the educational system or for individuals in the educational system. Funding can also stem off of poverty rates of students and those demographics of the school. So keeping in check and really knowing your school and your school district of what those fundings can show are going to be huge. All right, let's talk a little bit about the importance of staff evaluations in a school year. Staff evaluations are so important for many reasons, but ultimately it's given those administrators a chance to see their staff in action and showing their talents with those everyday students. Administration is constantly being called for behaviors and possibly negative situations. But when you're making rounds for more positive situations for teachers and putting on their best face and showing their academic knowledge, you see them flourish of what they can do and the successes that they're going to have. So let's talk about how many we think we should have in a year. I think that there should be informal and formal evaluations. So there should be one full class evaluation each year where you sit down and talk with that teacher about what they want to do and how they're going to do it and observe for that 45 minutes. Throughout the rest of the year, I think that there should be 2 to 3 informal observations and evaluations that are happening to get the full picture of a teacher. Sometimes a class has a bad day and you want to see how that teacher reacts to those situations. So giving multiple evaluations in a year is going to be huge for each of your staff. Putting them on different evaluation years is also going to be making more successful and less time for you in an everyday status as an administrator. Let's talk a little bit about this risk management. So risk management is about identifying the opportunities and avoiding losses. So there are main elements of risk management process that we can do. The first one is establish the context. This means this is putting everything in place for the rest of the time that we are working. So it's the criteria against which the risk will be evaluated and the structure and analysis that will be defined. The next part is the identifying risks. So identify like what and how are these risks happening on a daily basis or in a long-term status that is happening. You want to analyze risks, so determine the existing controls to analyze the terms and consequences and likelihood of these consequences and controls being changed. This could range from potential consequences or how these consequences might occur. You also want to evaluate the risk. Think ahead on these pre-existing criteria and how those risks can be ranked and prioritized in different statuses. You then want to treat your risk. Low priority risks should be monitored and reviewed as we go, but for higher consequence risks, we want to develop a plan, develop something so it doesn't happen again, and we can get ahead of it for the next time. You want to monitor and review. That means once your risk is done, you don't want to forget about it. You want to come back, you want to have that conversation, see if anything you might change to affect it differently next time. And lastly, you want to communicate. You want to communicate with the internal and external stakeholders in the situation so they know at what stage that risk management process is happening as a whole. Let's talk a little bit about transportation needs to know. Transportation in a school district and the things that we can do are huge for students and staff. So some ways that we can help with our transportation system is it can decrease the fuel usage that we're having. People are using the bus. You don't have to have 10 million cars in one area. We can also optimize the routes for students and users, finding places that they are going and places we want them to go, and having that route ready for them and accessible to them. Second last thing you want to do is you want to improve that bus safety. So you want to make students aware that transportation system is successful. Teach them how to use it. Some are afraid to use it. So making sure that they feel like when they go to another city or they go to a college, they're able to know how to get around if they don't have a car with them, if they're not lucky enough. The last thing is you want to have that better community outreach and getting those individuals involved in the community and getting them to see the city in a different light. It's different to take the bus around and get to where you need to be by being able to go there. They'll appreciate their form of communication a little bit more, but also it'll give them this back option if they ever needed it. Food services in our school district are so important, and they have so many challenges that they're facing on an everyday basis. So they have to make sure that students are getting those necessary food groups and constantly and consistently throughout the school days. They have to have proper nutrition with allergies and other food needs that kids have. Another challenge they have is finding meals that can be made for large groups of students. I think about our elementary schools. We have 300 kids plus 400 kids at some of them. How are we going to find a food group and food that is successful for those kids? Because they might be giving students 2 or 3 meals a day, they need to be efficient on those meals, but also students need to enjoy them, else they're not going to continue to take them. The biggest thing is we want to make students feel like they have an option. We're not going overboard with them because students may not be picking the healthiest options if given all these choices. So as a food service provider, you want to know what are those popular items, but also how can we get those food groups all in there on a daily basis when we're giving those meals to kids. As we start wrapping up our presentation, we're going to talk about technology and its effects on a daily basis. So we're going to start with these pros of technology in our classroom. There are so many reasons we want to keep technology in our classroom. First off, they use a variety of resources. Students have so many options to find a style of information they can understand and they can connect to. When we think about efficiency, that means for staff, we're grading, we're giving attendance, behavior tracking, conferencing, and usage on that everyday basis of organization of lessons. When we think about our real world and that preparation, we're practicing skills such as typing or creating of presentations. Employers are looking for new employees that will be willing to try new things and work with technology. So if we can interact some of those things into our classroom, that is going to be huge for students in the future. Students have some control in these situations. They're able to go out of their comfort zone, work and research and find new information on topics that they might be wondering about. And lastly, it's motivating and engaging. Going on a computer, using a smartboard, using a tablet. Students have a fun way to learn and they're confident with those materials that they have. They'll be enjoying learning because it doesn't feel as much work when they're using computers and typing online as it might when they're writing on paper in an everyday. There are so many pros, but there are also a few cons to having technology in the classroom. As we said before, there are so many, but here's our cons. Excessive screen time. Having students online and using technology can increase the time of looking at the screen. This could cause headaches or inactivity for students during the school day instead of talking and moving and having those conversations. Distractions are a huge part at all levels of technology. When students are asked to do an assignment, it's very easy for them to go onto other websites and get off task. This could mean playing games, watching videos, social media, or chatting with friends and students in other classes. Overall, it can be detrimental to students' learning. Cheating is a thing that can happen at any level, but at our higher level of learning is when it happens most. Students can use those online sources for taking quizzes and tests, and it's easy to use a Google search engine to ask those questions that you're answering if stuck. Lastly, it limits that student and human interaction. This is the biggest issue with technology in our world right now. Students don't know how to have a conversation with other people or keep a conversation going. They're always texting and have time of what they need to answer. So with technology in your classroom, you want to make sure you have that happy medium. You want to make sure that you are using it and getting those students ready, but they're also having those conversations of everyday life that they need. If you have any further questions, please feel free to contact me at any time. Here's my email and my phone number. I am always open to talking about any of these topics that were discussed today.